Sad news may be the phrase getting fans' attention right now, but the bigger story may be even more unsettling than a simple goodbye. Because what is happening at Days of Our Lives does not feel like one clean exit or one isolated casting update. It feels more like Salem is entering a transition period, one where familiar faces may slowly appear less often, while the show quietly prepares for something much larger behind the scenes. And that is exactly why fans are buzzing. On one side, two major players tied to current Salem storylines, Galen Gearing's Rafe Hernandez and Elia Cantu's Jada Hunter, have reportedly shifted from contract to recurring status. At the very same time, former General Hospital star Sophia Matson has officially joined Days of Our Lives, but the show is still refusing to reveal exactly who she will play. That combination is what makes this feel so much bigger than ordinary soap casting news. Because whenever a show starts reducing the visibility of established characters while bringing in a recognizable actress under a veil of secrecy, fans naturally start asking the same question. What bigger story is the show making room for? To be fair, recurring status does not automatically mean Rafe and Jada are being written out of Days of Our Lives. It does not mean a sudden goodbye is coming, and it does not guarantee that either character is disappearing from Salem anytime soon. In daytime, many well-known characters stay active even without full contract status. They can still return often, still affect major stories, and still remain part of the canvas when the writers need them. But that does not make this update feel small, because Rafe and Jada are not fringe characters floating around the edge of the show. They are both tied to core parts of Salem's structure. Rafe has been part of the emotional and investigative backbone of the series for years. He is a character viewers associate with loyalty, conflict, romance, family, and law-driven storylines. Whether he is involved in a personal crisis, a criminal case, or a complicated relationship, he brings stability to the canvas because he feels connected to so many corners of Salem. Jada now serves a similar purpose in a newer generation of stories. She has grown far beyond the role of a supporting character. She carries authority, emotional weight, and story relevance. As police commissioner, she is built into the mechanics of Salem itself, but she also has personal ties that give her scenes more than just procedural value. That is what made her rise feel important. So when both Rafe and Jada are reportedly affected at the same time, this no longer feels like random contract housekeeping. It feels like the show may be quietly rebalancing its focus. Maybe the writers are reducing emphasis on one part of Salem to strengthen another. Maybe certain long-running players are about to appear more selectively while a different storyline moves to the center. Or maybe this is the first sign that the canvas is being rearranged ahead of something much bigger. Not because Rafe and Jada are necessarily gone, but because when two active, meaningful characters both shift at once, fans immediately sense that something in the show's priorities may be changing. If the Rafe and Jada update created concern, Sophia Matson's casting is what adds real intrigue. Because the moment Days announced that Sophia was joining the show without revealing who she is playing, the story instantly became more than a standard casting update. It became a mystery. And soap fans know that kind of secrecy usually matters. A show does not bring in a recognizable actress with an established daytime presence and then hide the role for no reason. When that happens, it usually suggests one of two things. Either the character is connected to a major legacy reveal, or the identity itself is supposed to create immediate shock the moment it is announced on screen. That is why this part of the story feels so suspicious in the best possible way. If Sophia were stepping into a minor role, there would be far less need for silence. The show could simply announce the character and move on. But the fact that they are protecting the reveal makes it feel like her arrival is tied to something bigger than a routine addition. Something with emotional consequences. Something that could instantly affect multiple characters at once. That is where fan speculation starts accelerating. Because once viewers see secrecy like this, they do not think small. They start looking toward the names, families, and storylines that would actually justify that level of protection. And very quickly, one possibility rises above the rest. Abigail. Not because the show has confirmed it. Not because the evidence is final. But because it is exactly the kind of reveal that would explain why the role is still being kept under wraps. Now this is where the conversation gets even more interesting. There has been no official confirmation that Sophia Matson is playing Abigail DiMera. At this point, that remains fan speculation, and it is important to treat it that way. But even as a theory, it carries real weight. Because in the world of Days of Our Lives, Abigail is not just another departed character. She is one of those emotional anchors whose absence never fully stops shaping the people she left behind, especially Chad. And on a show like this, that matters. Soap history has trained viewers not to accept finality too easily, especially when past exits leave behind unanswered questions, emotional loose ends, or story logic that can still be reopened later. Abigail's story has never stopped mattering, and Chad's connection to her has never truly faded. She remains the defining love of his life, which means any suggestion of her return would immediately become bigger than a casting twist. It would become a full emotional event. And then there is the timing. Chad is entering a new era with Connor Floyd stepping into the role, which means the show is already preparing viewers to accept a major transition around one of its most important male leads. That kind of recast works best when it is attached to a storyline strong enough to pull the audience forward instead of leaving them stuck comparing the past to the present. That is where the Abigail theory starts feeling dramatically useful. Because if the writers want fans to fully invest in this new chapter of Chad's life, there may be no stronger hook than the impossible becoming possible. Not a memory, not another period of grief, not a temporary romantic distraction, but a real return that forces Chad, and the audience, to confront the one love story that never really ended emotionally. If that is the direction the show is heading, then Sophia Matson's hidden role suddenly makes a lot more sense. And even if the Abigail theory turns out to be wrong, the fact that so many fans believe it tells us something important. This casting secret already feels big enough to carry major emotional fallout. The deeper you look at all of this, the more Chad starts to feel like the real center of the story. Because Chad's emotional life is still unfinished in a way the show has never truly resolved. No matter what other relationships, distractions, or emotional detours have come and gone, Abigail has always remained the defining love of his life. That history still carries weight because it is not just romantic nostalgia. It is the kind of emotional foundation soaps return to when they want a story to feel truly major. If the show is entering a new phase with him, especially with a recast now taking over the role, then it makes sense that the writers may need something powerful enough to immediately re-anchor him in the audience's mind. A simple reset would not be enough. Chad needs a storyline that feels deeply personal, emotionally loaded, and important to multiple corners of Salem all at once. Because an Abigail return would not just affect Chad on a personal level. It would instantly ripple outward. EJ would be pulled into the fallout, especially if secrets, science, or manipulation played any role in what happened. Kat's place in Chad's life would become far more complicated. The DiMera family would be shaken emotionally and strategically. And perhaps most importantly, Chad's children would be pulled into a story that could redefine their entire world. It would feel like a central event. The kind of event that does not just add drama, but reorganizes the emotional gravity of the show around one core story. And if that is what Days is building toward, then this whole casting shift may be less about quietly reducing Rafe and Jada and more about repositioning the canvas around Chad's next major chapter. That does not erase the sense of loss some fans feel, but it does make the larger strategy feel much more visible. That is what makes this casting story feel so layered. On the surface, the emotional reaction is easy to understand. If fans believe they may be seeing less of Rafe and Jada moving forward, then of course that feels disappointing. Even when characters remain on the show, reduced visibility changes the texture of the canvas. Salem starts to feel different when familiar figures are no longer appearing with the same consistency or importance. And that is where the idea of an irreversible loss starts to become more emotional than literal. Because sometimes soaps do not change through one huge farewell or one dramatic final episode. Sometimes the shift happens more quietly. A character appears less, their story focus softens, their presence becomes more selective. And over time, viewers realize the show's emotional balance has changed. That kind of transition can feel just as real as an exit. But this story may not stop there. Because while one side of the canvas may be cooling down, another may be heating up fast. That is what makes the timing of all this so important. A mystery casting, a major recast, fan speculation building around a possible return, and contract changes affecting established players. Those are not random ingredients. Together, they create the feeling that the show may be moving from one era into another. And that may be the real story underneath the sadness. Not simply that some characters could be seen less often, but that Days of Our Lives may be actively reshaping its emotional priorities. One chapter may be slowly narrowing so another can explode into focus. That is why this news feels less like a simple goodbye story and more like the beginning of a transition story. A story about Salem changing form before viewers fully realize what it is becoming. At the end of the day, that may be the most important way to look at all of this. Because this is not just one update. It is not just a contract story. It is not just a mystery casting. And it is not just fan speculation running wild. It is the combination of all those things happening at once that makes the situation feel significant. Soap fans know better than to treat developments like these separately when the timing lines up this neatly. When a show starts shifting contract status for active characters, introduces a recognizable actress under secrecy, and prepares a major recast tied to one of its most emotionally important men, the natural question becomes bigger than any one name involved. What is the show preparing for? That is why Rafe and Jada moving to recurring matters. It may be one piece of the puzzle. Sophia Matson's hidden role may be another. And Chad's new era may be the piece that gives the entire picture meaning. So yes, there is a real emotional argument for calling this sad news. If longtime or currently important characters begin losing ground on the canvas, fans are right to feel that change. But there is also another possibility that may be even more dramatic. This may be set up for a return, set up for a major reveal, set up for a storyline big enough to redefine several relationships at once. And if that is true, then what looks like loss right now may actually be the groundwork for one of the show's biggest emotional shocks in the months ahead. And if that shock ends up being Abigail, then this story is not just interesting anymore. It becomes explosive. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think this is truly sad news for Days of Our Lives? Are Rafe and Jada slowly being pushed to the side? Or do you think the show is making room for something much bigger, maybe even an Abigail return? And if Sophia Matson is not playing Abigail, then who do you think she really is? Drop your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep dive Days of Our Lives breakdowns like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because if Salem really is heading toward an irreversible loss, it may also be heading toward a comeback that changes everything.